Welcome to this topical talk titled The Image of God and the Black Lives Matter Movement. So since the beginning of humanity's existence, human beings have enjoyed the privilege of being intelligent, emotional, relational, creative, problem-solving beings. Why is this? Well, Genesis chapter 1 explains from verse 27. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. So humankind has this amazing privilege of living and working under the authority of a benevolent good God. And of course, this understanding of being made in his image means that both male and female have equal standing before him, they have equal value before him. And whether someone is the highest politician in any country or an ordinary factory worker on the ground, each person, male or female, has equal value before God. So to listen to Patrice Khan-Koulos, the co-founder of the BLM movement, is to listen to a very well-spoken, well-informed person. If you go onto their website, you can look at videos which she speaks on, and the writing of the movement itself is all on their website. And she seems to be someone who is there to promote the improvement of the lives of black people. She also claims that the BLM movement follows the history of many wonderful liberation movements. But she also goes on to say that she never really felt at home as a young person within these liberation movements. And so she always longed for something better, something new. So what does this something new really look like? Well, going again to their website, having a look at the mission statement of the BLM movement. Hashtag Black Lives Matter, and I'm quoting from the website, was founded in 2013 in response to the acquittal of Trayvon Martin's murderer. Black Lives Matter Foundation Incorporated is a global organization in the US, in the UK, and in Canada whose mission is to eradicate white supremacy and build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on black communities by the state and vigilantes. So let's have a little closer look at that mission statement. So firstly, notice that the first mission objective is to eradicate white supremacy. So to achieve any other goal, they must first eradicate white supremacy. So by placing the words white and supremacy alongside each other, they're actually saying a lot more things, which is witnessed by what the movement actually does. They're saying that black people cannot be supremacists, also saying that black people cannot be racist, and this comes from their interpretation of what racism means, and in particular systemic racism. Also saying that white people cannot not be supremacist. And of course this is simply unashamed ethnic stereotyping. And although the word eradicate in the mission statement is not qualified here, we have seen the extent to which the movement is prepared to go in terms of violence, intimidation, etc. to achieve their goals. So an important question to ask then is, where does this kind of ideology come from? And I'm quoting now from an article by Dr. Peter Hammond from Frontline Fellowship, and this article was written on the 15th of June 2020. Black Lives Matter teaches cultural Marxism's critical race theory, which denies personal responsibility and teaches that some races are good and other races are evil. They teach a false gospel of victimization, resentment, riot, and revolution. So black Americans such as Dr. Ben Carson, Walter Williams, and Thomas Sowell have warned that cultural Marxism's critical race theory, this narrative of victimhood, is destructive to those who believe in it. It becomes an insidious snare that steals hope and replaces it with hopelessness. It takes away vision and replaces it with victimhood. So the second pillar of the BLM mission statement says to build local power to intervene in violence inflicted on black communities. But what does this actually mean on the ground? So back to the website of the BLM movement, and what does it say about itself, and what can we expect about these methods of intervention? So one of them we know is to defund the police. And an article 6th of June 2020 from the BLM website says this, what does it mean to defund the police? So we know that police don't keep us safe. And as long as we continue to pump money into our corrupt criminal justice system at the expense of housing, health, and education investments, we will never be truly safe. That's why we are calling to hashtag defund police and hashtag invest in communities. So notice again, all police have been stereotyped. Also notice that to attain their objective of empowering communities, they must first disempower the police, which is a real worry, isn't it? And so what other kinds of intervention can we expect? Well, I'm quoting now from an article written by Afrika Mhlophe from Gateway News, and it was written on the 23rd of July 2020. This is what he says. So Melina Abdullah, the co-founder of the Los Angeles chapter of BLM, recently revealed that it took her almost a year before she realized that BLM was much more than a racial and social justice movement. At its core, it is a spiritual movement. Abdullah and some demonstrators were recently involved in rituals where they recited the names of those taken by state violence before their time. Ancestors now being called back to animate their own justice. Religion News also goes on to report that after each name, Abdullah poured libations on the ground as the group in return chanted Ase. The Yoruba term is often used by practitioners of Ifa, a faith and divination system that originated in West Africa. So in the same article, the organization's overall co-founder, Patrice Cullors, is quoted as saying that she wasn't raised with honoring ancestors, but then in quotes she says, "As I got older and started to feel like I was missing something, ancestral worship became really important," she said. So on their website, BLM state one of the objectives, so listen to this, is to disrupt the Western prescribed nuclear family structure requirement by supporting each as extended families and villages that collectively care for one another. So they want to disrupt nuclear family, and then they go on further to say, also aim to free themselves from the tight grip of heteronormative thinking. So heteronormative thinking would include the biblical worldview of marriage between a man and a woman, which is upheld in society and, according to the Bible, is central to creating a sustainable, safe, well-ordered society. So the New York Post recently published an article referring to a newly surfaced video from 2015. In it, Patrice Cullors said that she and her organizers are trained Marxists. And so that's the end of Afrika Mhlophe's article. So the question then is there a better way to fight social justice? And of course the answer is an affirmed strong yes. So 2,000 years ago, a radical revolutionary movement was started by Jesus Christ, this rustic rabbi, and he challenged and changed the way the society viewed women, the way it viewed children. He came into a very hierarchical society, and he challenged that hierarchical society by his servant leadership model, and of course, finally by laying down his life for all of humanity, male, female, people, politicians, children, every culture, every background. He laid down his life, and he became the perfect leader, therefore. And his true followers, those who have followed him over the last 2,000 years, have worked tirelessly at breaking down social injustice. And so Jesus also introduced a much better economic system than that which was in place by Rome or within the culture which he came into. So Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 says this, "Again, it will be like a man going on a journey, who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gave 5 bags more. So also, the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received one bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. So notice, Jesus did not give the bags to the state or the government of the day, because he knew that the government of the day or the state would simply become corrupt as Rome was back in the day, or the religious systems of the day. No, he gave it to the individual on the ground, the man and the woman on the ground. So Jesus certainly was not promoting a communist or a socialist ideology. In fact, he was promoting a free market economy where the money was given to the individual, and the individual therefore is free to become a good steward of God's resources or a bad steward. Somebody who's able to excel or fail. Someone who is free to honor God as a steward of the resources given, or able to dishonor God. So Jesus affirmed that each person is made in the image of God, and each person is responsible for the gifts and abilities given to them by God. And of course, by being good stewards of his resources, we reflect the image of God to the world, particularly the broken world that we live in. So Jesus, of course, never ever allowed blame shifting at all, did he? Rather, he taught that every person is both responsible and accountable before a holy God for our lives. So John chapter 8, verse 10. Jesus straightened up and asked her, this is the woman who's been caught in adultery. And he said to her, woman, where are they? Those are all the accusing men standing around her. Has no one condemned you? No one, sir, she said. Then neither do I condemn you, said Jesus. And he said, go now and leave your life of sin, holding her accountable for her life of sin. So friends, to Jesus alone do we bow the knee. So then, in conclusion, what can we say? So fellow South Africans, I'd love to encourage you and exhort you today, whether you're black, colored, Asian, Indian, Khoisan, white, whatever your cultural background, that God has given us so much in this nation, and that he has made each one of us, from whatever cultural background we come from or exist in, we are made in his image, and we have been given so much, and we really do work so much better when we work together and we are not divided. We work so well when we are God's stewards. So firstly, be informed. Don't just become emotional and follow a movement which stirs up the masses and uses deceit and uses coercion to achieve its goals. Secondly, realize that you cannot separate the movement from its leaders. So take some time to have a look at its three co-leaders. Have a look at, in particular, two of the lifestyles chosen by leaders. Are you comfortable with those lifestyles? Do you feel those kind of lifestyles will lead us to a better future in our nation, a more stable country, a more loving nation where we respect one another? Take time to have a look at the lifestyles the leaders lead, because you can't separate the leaders from the movement itself. And then take time rather to focus on the real issues that are at hand in our nation, and of course also in America. So now I'm quoting from a friend of mine who is in academia, and he says this: the real problem in Black America is that 75% of households do not have a father at home, and that 90% of crime on blacks is committed by blacks. Yes, any unjust arrest or killing should be opposed vehemently. Managing society is about understanding statistics and responding accordingly. So Stats SA, and I went onto the website today, the unemployment rate in South Africa in the first quarter of 2020, of course it's much higher now, but even in the first quarter in 2020, it was up to 30.1%. That is a real issue in our country, isn't it? Port Elizabeth, the country that I live in. So now I'm quoting from Herald Live. This is an article written by a lady called Zippo Zenkosi Nkokazi. And the article says this: 3 Port Elizabeth suburbs, Bethelsdorp, New Brighton and Motherwell, have been identified as being among the most dangerous places to live in the province. The New Brighton Police Precinct made the top 5 list for murder, attempted murder, robbery with aggravated circumstances and contact crimes, and is the second high in the province after Kwazikele for carjacking, robbery at residential premises and robbery at non-residential premises. So unemployment, crime, education, healthcare, you know the stats, you know the reality in our nation, friends. Look at the websites, be informed. These are the real issues in our nation. And people who are made in the image of God, people who believe that God is our benevolent resource giver and that we are stewards of his resources, including our own body. So our relationships are important. The way we relate to one another, how the Bible defines marriage is important. So let me close now with a piece of writing by one of Jesus' closest followers. This is by Paul, and it comes from Ephesians chapter 2, verse 13 to 14. But now, in Christ, you who were once far away have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made the 2 groups one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility. And of course, that dividing wall of hostility was the hundreds of years dividing wall between the Jewish nation and the Gentiles. We've been through so much in this country, friends. We don't need to be sidetracked. Particularly Christians in this country. Let's continue to work towards what Jesus started thousands of years ago. Believing that our neighbor is made in the image of God. Believing that we are made in the image of God. Loving God and loving our neighbor. And working towards peace and reconciliation and justice in our society. Thank you so much for listening.